Hi, I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Danny Martinez, and I'm here to talk to you today about loneliness. So this was a highly requested topic, relevant to most of us who have been socially distancing for the better part of the last year. Over the past year, many lost their daily interactions from work or at school, and our social interactions after work or school, since most of us can't go out, have fun, and mingle like we used to. I remember a time when we used to go to restaurants and movies while being surrounded by strangers, and even though we didn't interact with them, we knew we weren't alone. So is being alone the same as being lonely? So most people know who Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are. But do you know who the third astronaut was on that Apollo 11 mission that landed the first humans on the moon? The third, much lesser known member of that group was Michael Collins. Why do so few people remember his name? Because while Armstrong and Aldrin were becoming the first humans to step foot on the moon, Collins had a different mission. He became the first person to orbit the moon, and he had the very important mission of being the connection point between the astronauts on the moon and mission control on Earth. But something fascinating happened when he went behind the moon. At one point, he lost all radio contact with Armstrong, Aldrin, and everyone on Earth. At that point, he was literally the most physically, socially distant human being in the universe, farther away from any other humans than anyone else in our entire existence. So people on Earth described him as the loneliest person in the universe. But when he was asked years later about this, about circling the moon all by himself, the so-called loneliest person in the universe, he had a very confident answer. No, far from feeling lonely and abandoned, I felt very much a part of what was taking place on the lunar surface. Even the most socially distant person in human history didn't feel lonely. He felt a deep sense of meaningful connection with others. He was a member of a team that went to the moon on a very specific mission. So regardless of the physical distance between him and others, he was completely alone. But he wasn't lonely. So being alone is about not being around other people, but feeling lonely is about not feeling connected to them in the way that you wish you were. So Michael Collins was all alone behind the moon, but he wasn't lonely. And then you have Justin Bieber, one of the most recognizable celebrities on Earth. Someone I imagine who is constantly surrounded by other people, and maybe literally is never alone. In his latest song, Lonely, which was a huge hit, he shares his feelings about loneliness. And no, I don't have the rights to it, and no, I'm definitely not gonna sing. What if you had it all, but nobody to call? Maybe then you'd know me. 'Cause I've had everything, but no one's listening, and that's just lonely. The lyrics say it all. You can have it all, be constantly surrounded by people, and still feel lonely when you feel like no one really hears you or really knows you. Even if you're really outgoing and you talk to lots of people, if others don't really know you, then you feel disconnected from them. So for many of you, it's not being alone that's necessarily affecting you the most. It's the loss of meaningful connection, or the feeling of loneliness that comes from feeling invisible or unknown that's really making things hard. But what if I told you that there's something that might even be worse than feeling disconnected? There's a chance that you're experiencing some of this too. Feeling disconnected can be sad and tragic, but what if feeling disconnected is not coming from being alone, but is coming from feeling inadequate? Feeling inadequate is feeling you are not good enough, or that you're simply not enough. When we're stuck alone at home, bored and out of ideas, feeling lonely and wondering what others are doing to get by. When we check our social media feeds and we see everyone else's highlights while we're stuck with the behind the scenes of our own lives, we might start feeling distant from what's on our screen. Not only are we socially distant from others at that point, but we might start thinking that the world is out there having fun, is way cooler and more interesting than we are, or maybe just overall doing better than we are. And so we might start wondering if we are even good enough to be a part of all that, even if we were physically closer to it. Ultimately, this can affect our self-esteem and our self-worth. And low self-esteem and low self-worth may be linked to things like depression, unhealthy coping mechanisms like poor eating behavior or substance use, difficulties getting restful sleep, and maybe even further isolation, which just makes things harder and harder. Regardless of what social media leads us to believe, it might be good for you to be reminded that you are not alone if you're feeling inadequate. And having these questions about your self-worth come up may be related to being socially distant, feeling lonely, and disconnected from it all. Remember that you're not alone in your struggle, and that your self-worth doesn't have to be defined relative to the perceived successes of others you see on your timeline. Okay, so if you know someone that's feeling lonely, this might be a good time to reach out and reconnect. But I want to leave you with a couple of tips on how to do that. When you reach out, practice active listening. It's simply making sure that the person that you're talking to can see that you're interested in listening to them by your words and your body language. People can tell when you're not really interested in listening to them. Don't make the conversation about you. Allow them to be the center of your attention. And show a genuine interest in the other person. Having a genuine, non-judgmental attitude when we connect with others is one of the best ways that we can remind them of their worth. It's so cool to imagine that reaching out and connecting with someone intentionally might not only help relieve some of those feelings of loneliness, but may also result in a boost to their self-esteem, to help develop the confidence to remember that they are not alone and have not been forgotten, but that they are also lovable, interesting, and worthy of your time and attention.